All
right.
right. Hello. Good. We're
Good.
good.
Good morning.
So hi everyone. I'm Nick and I'm here with Masharia again. We're gonna continue our conversation about the Ubrica project. And last week we kind of talked about what is the problem seeking to be solved, and that's healthcare access in Africa. And we established last week, if you want to go back and look at that video, that healthcare is indeed very expensive, low quality, difficult to get. This impacts mortality, and just all around seems like a situation that should be remedied. Now, let's transition our conversation this week, Mashri, if we can, more toward the technical side of your cryptocurrency.
Yes.
And I know I just jumped in there. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much, Nick. Again, I appreciate your presence this morning as we dive deeper into global health, the role of the blockchain in global health, in producing global health itself. It's a very technical subject because there are two technical matters that we have to address. One of them is health production, meaning life science and health itself. And the other one is the blockchain. The blockchain itself is also a very high-tech product. So, and bringing the two of them together, I think it's going to be a great joy and breakthrough. All right, thank you so much, Nick, and everyone who is watching, and everyone who's going to be watching this later on YouTube. I really appreciate your presence. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so let's jump into the conversation. Last week, we started to talk about the quantity of UBN in circulation. And just again, UBN is the coin that is attached to the Ubrica project. So it's the cryptocurrency for the ecosystem. And there's 20 billion of them in circulation. You mentioned last week that these 20 billion, you actually came up with this number by determining the total market for healthcare. Can you just kind of remind us of that position right there? Why 20 billion?
20 billion, I think, is a very low estimate of the total available market for health in African continent. We calculated 20 billion as the total available market for health in Kenya alone. And that one, that figure comes from the money that is sent to African countries by relatives working in other countries. We call them the diaspora nationals, diaspora nationals of African countries. They said in Kenya receives a lot of billions of dollars every year from the United States. You know, Kenyans working in the United States sending money to Kenya. And mainly they're sending that money for health care or health services to support their loved ones at home, to buy, healthcare goods, healthcare services. And even when they send that money, the care that people receive is not of good quality because quality itself is not produced locally. And it's also very, very expensive. So Kenya estimates that it receives about $2 to $3 billion a year in remittances. And this is money that is calculated all the way by the World Bank. The entire African economy receives about 160 billion, $160 million every year. And this money is so much, so it's being sent from outside to come into the country to take care of healthcare needs. That is one source of the estimate of the market size. But the market is much, much bigger than the remittances themselves. The remittance representing maybe only 1% of the healthcare spending in the country. So 1%, if Kenya is getting about 2 billion, then 1%, you multiply that by, if you're on 1%, you can say it times 100. Then 90% is coming from the local people. And that would make it a lot of money, eventually the total market size. So the estimated market that maybe we could capture is only about 20 billion. And that is it's a gross underestimate on, to be on the safe side. and that is looking at the entire cross-section of the economy. Yeah. And once the economy begins waking up, because most of the capital in the African continent is dead capital. It is dead because it is unrepresented in the market. Capital becomes alive when it is represented in the market in a different format, so that maybe it's represented in title deeds, or maybe in non-fungible tokens, or derivatives, or stocks and shares in the stock exchange. Majority of capital in the African continent is unrepresented. And as soon as that capital begins to get represented, then you can see the market growing and exploding, exploding in a meteoric phase. Yeah, these are the sources of the 20 billion. And we are, some people estimate that the total market cap, the total market itself of health, it could be $100 billion worth. See, so when you made the tokens, we made 20 billion tokens, and we hope that each token is going to be $1, even $1 per token, and that can be sufficient money to provide health care in Kenya alone. And then when it now transfers into other countries, you can see it growing to maybe 100 billion, and that can mean that instead of being $1 per token, the token can have a value of $100 per token, which is a still very, very low estimate of the value of. I need to shut my device here, which is talking. Yeah.
Sure. Just quickly.
Yeah.
I have two questions, I think, but let's start with the dead capital. So there's, the potential market for healthcare is presently limited by its parameters, essentially, and that parameter is that there is dead capital. There's capital that is not represented. So who owns that capital? Doesn't representation of capital indicate ownership? So if we have a bunch of dead capital, I'm assuming that's property, both digital and physical, and who owns it? The state? Do individuals own it and it's just not on the books?
Yes, individuals produce capital on a daily basis, but that capital is not represented. I give you an example. In many, many places in Africa, I think in all countries, you can build a house on your piece of land. Majority of the houses built, I think majority of the houses built in African villages do not have title deeds. Yeah, they don't have title deeds. And that when they don't have title deeds, this means that you cannot go to the bank and borrow money against that house, get a mortgage to get, to even. So that house is unrepresented in the market. If you say that literally almost 100% of the buildings in the villages and the communities in Africa are not represented with title deeds that can actually be taken to the bank, or they could say bankable title deeds, that capital is dead because it's in itself, it cannot reproduce.
Okay.
You see, that's just the basic example. And and this cuts across, it's not just houses. Now the other big problem is land titles. The titles of lands are not consistent. So that the Ministry of Lands in many different countries in Africa, particularly in Kenya, has put a lot of effort to make sure that every single piece of land has got a title. But that doesn't work so well always, because you can have one piece of land having multiple titles. This means that the bank, if you were to take a title deed to the bank to say, I would like to borrow money against this title, the bank is going to, go to a lot of pain to establish the validity of that title. And this means that even if you have a piece of land and the piece of land has got a title, it would mean that piece of land, it does not give you access to capital because it's not represented in the market and cannot be sold. That is just direct representation of physical property. Then there's another capital that gets represented in the market in form of derivatives. A derivative is, say, things like you sell in the stock market that are not the actual representation, the direct representation, but derived representation. Things like futures, options, and swaps. We do not have any of those anywhere in Africa. In fact, we have not had in our stock exchanges in Africa. There's no derivatives market. Totally, there's nothing like that, and that means the derivatives market represent more than the 700 times the gross domestic product of any nation because it represents. Yeah. Yeah. Derivative futures, swaps.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Okay. So.
Yeah. And I think this becomes very interesting because we're working in partnership with a group of people in Africa, in South Africa, who have created African Consolidated Exchange. And that is remarkable. It's a totally cryptocurrency-based exchange on the blockchain, which is going to represent all that value on the African ground, in the continent, into the stock market. That's an exchange. So it's an exchange, say, like Coinbase, but it's going to represent not only the coins or the tokens like Ubricoin, but it is allowing tokenization of property. Like you can tokenize your building, you can tokenize your land, you can tokenize your title deeds. Yeah. And so we tokenize all that, also creating non-fungible token, and they shall be traded in the African Consolidated Exchange, known as ACEX. I think that's now when that happens, because ACEX was launched about a month ago, and you can go online, there's ACEX.market, and they're just now beginning to start listing the products there. And that alone is the economy that is likely to stimulate is worth more than $1 trillion, because it's a representation economy for the entire African continent. Yeah. So in that, 20 billion looks like a drop in the bucket in front of ACEX, African Consolidated Exchange. Yeah.
How quickly do you expect this to kind of shoot up? What is your timeline for, UBN, that being something that's possible, but this exchange that is going to tokenize the economy, make it so that you can't have multiple deeds to a property and everything can actually work as expected and value can be, tracked, extracted, utilized, leveraged. When do you see this coming to pass in Africa?
It's actually the greatest news I want to deliver to people, that ACEX, it was launched in December last year, December 2021, and the team has put in a lot of work, and eventually they managed to send it live completely, polished up in June this year. That's last month. So it's already up and running, but has only listed a few cryptos, and of course it's still in its beta testing phase. So I think that maybe by the end of this year, it will start listing many tokens, and that is then see, that's the listing and the marketing process, and to create awareness. Of course, it needs massive community education. The next step, for it to take off completely, we can say during the next year, like 2023, we'll see it taking off like a rocket if everything goes well as planned. Yeah, that is the African Consolidated Exchange, and that means that with coins like Ubricoin, now we managed to list them in a native African exchange that has got a lot of followers already. Yeah.
Mm.
And you see,
Wow.
another thing that these tokens are doing is to capture that remittances market in a very, very beautiful way. Because when people send remittances, say like if I'm in the United States and send money to
Yeah.
the village, that money departs my pocket and goes away completely. It goes to the other person.
Hmm.
But if I buy tokens that are held by someone in Africa, the tokens come to me and the money goes to the person in Africa. You see? So it's a win-win position. So you're sending remittances, but the remittances are actually not going anywhere. They're coming back to your pocket. And so
And
it's a very fascinating market.
of course, and there'll be no boundaries on this. Like with a blockchain for a public stock market, that can be globally accessed, right? It can't be blocked from a certain country unless a country bans it, right? It can be so someone in the US could invest in the African market by way of this exchange, this blockchain exchange, right?
Absolutely. You see, the blockchain is uncensored and it
Hmm.
is boundaryless and it is peer-to-peer. And so the ACEX market itself has got peer-to-peer platform, such that even in certain countries, which say that we do not want our people trading on the blockchain,
Hmm.
that is not going to prevent people from trading because there's peer-to-peer infrastructure built in ASIC itself that bypasses all these, boundary recognition and censorship that is created by third-party people. And it is unlikely that any government is going to put up restrictions that are so hard because um, the 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 a country can regulate itself out of blockchain, but it cannot regulate its people out of blockchain. See, country cannot regulate its people out of blockchain because it's totally decentralized. That's the beauty of the blockchain itself. And that is why I totally believe in it in terms of creating access to market and creating access to health eventually. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Nice wrap around the original point there. Let's build on it. Let's talk about the Ubricoin is an ERC20 token that derives its value from its exchange with Ether.
Yeah.
So you've talked about derivatives. We see the word derive here again. So curious, does that mean the same thing in this context? What is an ERC20 token? And why does value come to it because of its exchange? Doesn't a token have value in and of itself? Is its value dependent upon the value of Ether? If the value of Ether drops, does the value of the Ubricoin also drop, or can it stand on its own?
Well, the Ubricoin can stand on its own. And let's just talk about that. When we built Ubricoin, that was in 2018. We only had Ethereum as the alternative network. There was, of course, the Bitcoin network. Then we have Ethereum, and then since that time, so many other platforms have come where you can build your blockchain. Of course, there's Binance, and we have Solana, then we have Cardano, a whole bunch of them. And when we say that it derives its value from Ether, it means that somebody had to buy Ubricoin with Ether itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why it was built. And of course, that's why it's an ERC20 token. But since that time, and since the time we wrote that white paper, when an ERC20 token could only be exchanged for Ether, so much has changed that now you can wrap your coin and then it becomes accessible on Binance, blockchain. So it's then you can actually and people who have come later, like Solana. Solana were created by I'm forgetting his name. I'm going to Michael Wood. Mike Wood was working with Vitalik Buterin in the beginning, but then he later came and built Solana blockchain. And Solana is quite similar, almost similar to it was almost similar to Ethereum because actually rated on Solidity. And Mike Wood, he actually is the one who developed the Solidity itself that Ethereum is built on. And so it means that ERC20 tokens can actually operate on Solana network. And I think the same thing is happening in Cardano. So these coins they're going to be, releasable over different exchanges. So when we're saying it was driving its value through Ethereum network, that has been bypassed by the change of events over the last 2 years. I think the last 3 or 4 years, yeah. So much has happened, and so much is to happen. And when you say it's that driving of value is quite different from a derivative. A derivative is a representation of value in the market by something else, and it's something else representing value, but not the thing itself. Yeah, I think we can have a discussion about derivatives much differently. There's a company that has created derivatives market on the blockchain known as synthetics. Synthetics. Now you can take Ubrica coin and create synthetics on it. A synthetics now is a derivative of would be synthetics would allow you to create a derivative of Ubrica coin. That the derivative would be an option, for example, or a swap, or a future, or something like that. And these derivatives really are kind of insurance programs. When you talk about swaps and you create options, it is something that somebody is betting upon to get something else in the future. And I think the basic derivative that came from the very beginning is a future contract. A future contract, maybe a forward contract, is where you promise to deliver something in future, but you don't have that thing yet. So then that's just a contract, and then the contract is sold in the market so that you can get money to buy the thing that you want to deliver. So that makes sense. For example, if you get a contract from, say, Hilton Hotel to deliver potatoes worth $1 million in December, you see? So you get a contract today and you need to deliver potatoes for $1 million. You do not have the potatoes. You don't even have the farm. But now you can sign an agreement with Hilton and then take that agreement to the stock market to sell it in the future. And you raise that money through that contract. So that you can go and buy a farm and plant potatoes for 3 months, and then you will have potatoes worth $1 million at the end of the year to sell, to take to. And you see, the contract starts trading in the market right away. That's a future contract. And people are going to buy that contract because it is actually there in the market being traded. It just keeps, so you see the contract itself is not potatoes, and there are actually no potatoes. And that is why such a contract is known as a future contract or derivative or a synthetic contract, because it's not a real stock. It's not representing anything in real life, but it's representing a derivative value. Yeah.
Okay, good.
That is what we call financial engineering.
That's really neat. It's a really beautiful idea, and you articulate it so well. I've been reading about stocks and practicing all of that for a few years now, but I've never heard someone articulate the idea of a future so perfectly. It was such a good metaphor. Thank you for that. Can we tackle just something else really quick? We're about 24 minutes in here, but your coin, there's a staking rate that you talk about in chapter 4 of the white paper. But I think I also read that the coin is a proof of work system. So how do you have a staking rate on a proof of work system?
We have not activated the proof of stake because the proof of stake is something we have a vision to do, and we are going to do it in the African Consolidated Exchange, the ACEX. But right now the coin is on proof of work mechanism because it's on Ethereum network. And you see, Ethereum network has been this thing is still making noise. Ethereum, Ethereum network has been proof of work ever since its beginning, and it's coming to proof of stake right now. And of course, there's a lot of opposition from the miners themselves who make a lot of money in the proof of work. But given that in proof of stake mechanism, we want, because proof of stake actually activates the people in the community, the community of users, we could call it the ecosystem, to participate in validating the transactions. We want to implement it, and I think this is a very great opportunity because we have now an exchange that is going to help us do all that. The ACEX African Consolidated Exchange, and I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Does when Ether transitions to proof of stake, will the Ubricoin automatically transition to proof of stake also because it's derived from it, or does it have to undergo its own transition? So I know that's been quite a long process with Ether. So would that also be a difficult process with the Ubricoin?
No, it's automatic because it's based on Ether itself.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, then it's going to be automatic and transition into proof of stake, and that is so even the transaction fee is going to lower down because Ethereum in the proof of work mechanism, the transaction fee can become quite high because sometimes there are too many transactions that the cost increases incredibly. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Cool. So, let's jump over to something else really quick. So this is like the last beginning idea for what I have to present to you, and then we can get into a little bit more fun topics related to the Ubricoin project. But of the 20 billion coins that are out there in circulation, I was reading about the initial allocation of coins. And there was 7.5% going to founders, and there was 77.5% going to the Ubricoin project itself. And then there was a remaining 15% or so kind of scattered about.
The coins
they're not. Go ahead.
The fraction of coins that is out is the one that was bought by the existing shareholders in the organization. But majority of the coins are still the majority of the coins are still in a smart contract. They have not been released, so they are not in circulation as such. And so to say that, so for the project itself, you see, we had envisaged throughout the timeline of the project, maybe 5 steps for the project to become complete. The initial is that e-commerce platform, which would consume about 20%.
The Sokojanja, right?
The Sokojanja, yes. Then we have the clinics, that is the retail clinical centers, consuming another 20%. And then we have the Science and Technology Park program, consuming another 20%. And then the biomedical industrial city, which will take the lion's share. And that will take the largest because biomedical industrial city is big. But these are milestones that are going to unfold progressively over maybe a period of 10 or next 10 years or so. Or maybe because you can say this is a multi-generation type of project, and we wanted to do that. So my discussion with the CEO of ACEX yesterday say that we can actually tokenize those projects sequentially on the exchange. That means each time right now the project we are tokenizing is the Sokojanja, the online market. So it gets tokenized on the exchange, in ACEX Exchange, over the next few months. And then the next project that we tokenize is the delivery system for Sokojanja. And then the clinics follow, and then the Science Technology Park tokenization. So I think by the end of it, we're going to have about 6 tokenization protocols for, based on Ubricoin on the ACEX, on the African Consolidated Exchange. Yeah, that's the plan. You see, That one needs to come into an updated white paper, which we have not developed because ACEX was launched in December last year. And we are having these great conversations about how to move forward and to create value. It was very difficult to do these things before we have an exchange in Africa because all the exchanges are outside of the continent. Of course, we have Coinbase in the United States, and then we have Binance, which is, I think, multiple countries. And then we have Kraken and all that, but not a single exchange in Africa. And so ACEX is major transformational. It's going to have major effects.
No, I don't want to just gloss over the fact that you said you had a conversation yesterday with the CEO of ACEX. Talk. How connected are you in Africa? When we think about when people who haven't seen this video before come and they click on this video and they hear you talking. Who are you in the professional sphere, in the public sphere in Africa? How much influence do you have?
Influence, I don't know how much influence I have. I think some people say I have a lot of influence, but by myself, I don't know. But I actually know a lot of people, hundreds and thousands of people. And we have multiple networks. And we have worked with different groups, particularly in different countries in Africa, into, let's say, two separate groups of people. One is the African diaspora, which is in the United States. There's a lot of Africans who are here in the United States, and they're always, trying to do things at home. So I'm very much deeply connected with that. And then I'm also connected with, we could say, leadership, not political leadership. I'm not interested in politics, but business leadership in African continent. So that, for example, I was speaking to Ian yesterday. Ian is in Johannesburg, South Africa. That's the CEO of ACEX. And he was telling me about all his networks. He has a lot of networks also in different countries because ACEX has got a presence in about 32 African countries already. And so that he's deeply connected. You see, I have worked in Nigeria. We have contacts in Nigeria, and we have contacts in Uganda, in Tanzania. And these are business contacts. And so when you continue working together, it becomes something that is very, very beautiful. And so that is in terms of connections. Now, this connection is occasioned by the voice over the internet protocol, what you call WhatsApp. WhatsApp enables us to support each other. And it is surprising. Like yesterday, when I was speaking to Ian, I told him that we have also created a blockchain wallet for a USSD phone, a smart feature phone, the old Nokia feature phone, which you just dial numbers and it's not a smartphone. We have a blockchain wallet. One of the techies in our company, known as Jordan Mudemba in Nairobi, worked with some guys in the team and created a blockchain wallet for the feature phone. And I was telling Ian that the feature phone is not excluded from the blockchain anymore because we have a wallet for that, which can actually access coins even in Coinbase. And that is, so the feature phone is, every household has got a feature phone in Africa today, because the feature phone costs maybe something like $10.
That's what is a feature phone? Is that like a track phone?
No, a feature phone. Remember those phones that are not smartphones, where they only have a tiny keyboard with numbers.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just those. Anything without a touch screen that kind of has the 9 buttons there. Okay.
That one. Everyone has got a feature phone. Every family has a feature phone, and sometimes they have 2 of them because they have multiple people in the family. But then also in Kenya today, the smartphone penetration is very, very high. Last time I checked the statistics about smartphone penetration, it was about 81% in the households in Kenya. And so Ian was telling me that we don't even need to worry too much about feature phone. Africans are really connected, and that's why they're able to speak on WhatsApp, because you cannot speak on feature phone on a WhatsApp. You
Sure.
cannot do a WhatsApp call on feature phone. It
What
is
was the smartphone saturation 10 years ago over there?
10 years ago.
Yeah, an estimate. So if we're like 80% now, what was it?
Oh, smartphone saturation, you could say it was half of that, because we have seen a meteoric phase, like skyrocketing. It just
Yeah.
took off like, nobody's business. Like, to the shock even of the government and the phone
Yeah.
company. Yeah, the uptake was so high and so rapid at once.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just went up. So, and I think also the cryptocurrency uptake is going to be the same way, because all those people who went and got smartphones were people who were excluded from the communication market. And now if they find the smartphone also brings them into the banking market or the financial system market,
Hmm.
then you're going to see another meteoric rise, and it's just rising to the moon. Like we say in blockchain, to the moon. In cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency.
So,
Mm.
so let's see. What we have is an economy that's getting almost an overlay of a new technology,
Yeah,
and your project is one of the currencies operating on that overlay that's going to bring that economy. It's going to connect itself internally, and it's going to allow access to it externally from the rest of the world. And your project particularly is focusing on healthcare. I think we're just over the half-hour mark, but let's preview what we'll talk about next time.
yeah,
And that is how your system is actually going to work. What is it going to do, and how is it going to do it? I kind of wrote down this phrase about taxation. So you are going to be almost, I don't think you used the word taxing, but when you transact on Sakojanja,
yeah,
your online marketplace, those transactions will be taxed essentially. They will be fractionalized and allocated. And
yeah,
that transaction that's fractionalized, some of that money is going to go to a smart contract for healthcare. And you kind of talk about that smart contract for healthcare as
yeah,
a communal pool to, make sure that people have healthcare services and access to the funds to get that. But I think that taxation idea is very interesting. But then you also have things that are airdrops where you're giving money back to the community. You're incentivizing and penalizing good or bad behaviors. So it really seems that the Ubercoin project, it has a grand mission. And now if we're looking under the hood a little bit, we see that, it does have some of those systems in place that remind us of a standard company or country or organization that has an objective that they are seeking to implement, the incentive mechanisms all around. So you want to just give us a little preview about kind of all that I just said there?
yes. And here I'm getting my hydroponic system is making quite a bit of noise. Is it bothering?
Oh, it's not coming through at all.
It's not coming through. Okay. I was getting concerned about that. Okay. Yeah. It is blockchain is very beautiful because it's capable of doing fascinating stuff. Now, for the first thing in terms of extracting value for health in transactions, initially we did not know how we can actually take, how we can fund health. But because it requires people to pay insurance voluntarily for themselves, to buy insurance voluntarily for themselves. But what we are going to do and what we plan to do with the blockchain through Sakojanja is that when somebody buys a product from you, that money is fractionated 3 times. You get the profit yourself, and then a small quantity of money goes into a health pool, a smart contract, which is a health pool. It gets pulled together with some other money. And then, of course, there's money that's sent to the government for its own taxation. That health fund, which is a smart contract health fund, now will be used to pay for health services. Wherever you go to receive clinical care, then you can receive clinical care without having to carry your All you have to do is that you have to smart contract. You have to have your public key in your wallet, and then you show your health provider, and health provider is going to get paid, so long as the health provider is in the same ecosystem. And that means that we can now allocate fractions of the sales of the product into a health fund, which now operates like the traditional insurance company. It's not insurance; it's a kind of prepaid system. Just like you have Kaiser Permanente in the United States, we have got a prepaid system. So we have a prepaid system, prepaid concept where people actually pay for their care before they receive it into a common pool. And it means that you can actually consume care without worrying where the money is going to come from, because the money is already there. And this money is coming from the activities of daily living, it's instrumental activities of daily living. It's coming from the goods they're selling in the market, and that makes it very attractive. Rather than what, governments are doing today, is saying that let's create a national health insurance fund by telling people to pay 500 shillings a month. When you tell people to pay 500 shillings a month, and you do not care where that money comes from, it means that that type of project is dead flat on its face, because people are going to start paying the first month, second month, and then after that they don't have money, because they have goods but they cannot sell them. So when you help the people to sell their goods, then we take the money, some of the money they are making, and then put it into a health fund. And what we have told the people is that if you want, say like something like 10, let's say 100 shillings from a product, with the shillings, Kenya shillings, then when you list it in the market, we are going to list it as maybe 100. We're going to add the health fund on top. Like it's going to be 110 or maybe 120, depending on the calculations. And so we have seen that if you do that, then the seller is going to get the 100 shillings, and then the other money on top is going to go into the health fund. And then, of course, there's money collected for taxation. And that is the beauty of it, that the blockchain now is actually able to gain control of health financing in that way. Very, very beautiful and elegant. Yeah. And then you see it's the blockchain itself, and those tokens also, then they're active in the international market through an exchange. And so you connect that individual level activity to the international market, and that is ultimate representation. And that is what brings that dead capital to life completely.
I got you. I think you answered what I'm about to ask you in your blurb there, but I think it might have gotten a little buried in something I want to highlight. Yeah. So let's say you and I are interacting in the Ubrica ecosystem. You are the provider, I am the purchaser.
Yeah.
You're selling, let's say, a wagon. You're selling me a wagon, and I'm going to buy this wagon from you for 50 Uber coins. Yeah. I send you that 50 Uber coins.
Yeah.
Who is being taxed? Are you paying income tax to the government? Am I paying a retail tax to the government? And which one of us is contributing to the communal healthcare pool?
So when the wagon costs $50, as you see it on the market, but most likely the money that I had requested was $40. Yeah. So if there's $10, maybe let's say $45. If that's $5 on top, some of it will go to the government, because of course the government is there to be collecting money by force, and the rest of it goes to the health fund. Yeah. And so you get I would get my $40 that I had requested, or $45 I had requested, and then I will still get coverage for healthcare, and I would be able to pay taxes, because you see, every good you sell, you must pay taxes for it to the government. Yeah. So the person who is buying You see, eventually the cost goes to the buyer, ultimately, because the buyer is the one who is spending the money. Has to spend that extra money to access that, and it's not really a lot of money considering the goods. Right now, the goods in Africa are very, very cheap because nobody is buying them. So if we have that type of structure, it doesn't really increase the cost too much. It just bumps the price a little bit higher than the initial asking price. Yeah.
Okay, so the seller, you are paying a income tax essentially, and then the buyer, me, I'm paying a retail tax as well as some surcharges to go into the health plan. Who's getting access to the health plan in this transaction? Both the buyer and the seller can use it as long as they're using the ecosystem.
We would like to encourage as many people to sell their things, the things they produce, because people have things to sell. It's just that they do not know how to sell them. And so the seller will benefit the most by having, money coming in. And I think that's a good point you're raising, because it brings back the question, where does that leave the buyer? Is the buyer out of action, out of access to health? And I think we should build it such that some fraction of the money that the buyer pays also goes into that health fund. Yeah, that's a great issue, because if somebody is saying, if I buy, you see this kind of loyalty points, you know that when you buy something from a certain market, you will have access to healthcare services just because you bought something. Yeah. And you see, we did calculations to find out how many people would you need contributing so much money per month into a health fund. You do they call that in healthcare actuarial analysis, or in finance, health finance actuarial analysis.
Yeah. And
we found that if you had 300,000 people needing healthcare, you could say a population of 300,000 people, that's, we could say, a third of 1 million people, they could contribute $1 each per member per month. And that would be enough to provide them the best healthcare they can get. Because the incidence of disease in that 300,000 people, the incidence of health services consumption is only about 15%. That means that you would get $300,000, which in Kenya shillings, 300,000 is like what, 30 million shillings. That money is so much. in Kenyan speak, the 30 million can pay for healthcare for all those people needing healthcare in that particular community. And from actuarial studies, we know that only 15% of the people in a community consume healthcare in one time. Yeah.
Okay.
15%. So we'll be having $300 million a month to cater to 15% of that group of people. And that is enough money to give them very, very good quality of care.
That's very cool that when you look at numbers like this, you think opportunity in terms of humanity. You think, let's make something better for a whole community and a whole bunch of people. I hear a number like that, and I think, how can I leverage this to swindle everyone else out of their money?
Yeah, that's what some people think. But in fact, when you do that, you get a lot more money than the one you get by swindling. Because
that's true. Yeah, create value, bring.
You create, because money comes from creating value. Money comes from creating value and helping people gain access to something, and they become happy and they pay for it.
Yeah.
You see, people have given money, Jeff Bezos, a lot of money, then they complain that he's too rich. It's because he creates a lot of value. Look at what he has done with Amazon.com. Amazing stuff, amazing what I have to say. And it's not because he's stealing money from people. People actually take money there voluntarily. Why? because Jeff Bezos is very concerned about giving them the greatest value possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so if we go with the same philosophy, trying to give people the greatest value possible, then we can activate a lot of money on the ground and they have a lot of value. And they can access, the best quality care in the world. And one thing I want to say as we close is that medicine or life science and healthcare is the last frontier of mankind. We have conquered literally almost everything else, including people like Jeff Bezos now trying to create infrastructure for going to the next planet. So, and Elon Musk talking about interplanetary species. We have done nothing in healthcare and life science. We haven't done anything. And this is what I would like to challenge everyone who is thinking about interplanetary species. Our own planet doesn't have access to care. That is why small things like viruses, like COVID, like Ebola, they can come from anywhere and then spread throughout the world like nothing is happening. You know why? Because they don't need visa. A virus. As you're talking about interplanetary species, the virus itself, is going to decimate all of us before we go to the next planet. And that's why we need to focus intensively, focus investment in life science and health production, because that's a very, very huge market, much more surprisingly huge than you can even imagine. And to now focus in a market where we can conquer things like COVID, the coronavirus, and the other outbreak viruses, and even much more older diseases like malaria, tuberculosis. This is a very huge opportunity for investment, and of course to make a lot of money for those people who are interested in making a lot of money. Yeah, it's a huge market.
I think it's really neat the way that you look at money and opportunities. I think there's a couple different mindsets. There's the mindset of people who look at, all right, let's build up $1 and today, $1 tomorrow, and build up money, and then eventually they feel like they have the funds to initiate a project. I feel like you have the more CEO high level perspective of here's a project, here's the opportunity, create something that people want that will be transformative and capital will come. And there's such confidence that the project will be successful and such a commitment to the project for people like you and other you and people like you who are creating transformative projects, and it just attracts capital like nobody's business. And I think that's very impressive. And
what I think is that if you are solving a very important problem, of course, some people are going to hate you and say this one has no money to build all that. But the money comes because you're building it. I've seen, projects like Facebook, they were not created with a lot of capital in the beginning. And now they turned out into a multi-billion-dollar, almost $1 trillion, I think it's $1 trillion company. And what they do, just creating, platform for connecting people. It would look from as people who would say hardcore investors would say that is a lot of nonsense, like connecting people. What is that to invest in? And yet, and then look at YouTube. I mean, just helping people post videos online. They don't even tell you to pay for the videos when you post them, but they make a lot of money. Google now, and of course, Google creating search engine. So I believe that the business model, when you're providing service, solving a very fundamental problem that, most people are unwilling to tackle because they are rushing to see how they can make the biggest money the next day. The business model where you're solving a very fundamental problem is where value is, and that value is created. Yeah, that is it. And you could say Jeff Bezos, when he was creating Amazon.com way back in 1994, he was not trying to become a trillionaire.
Yeah.
See? And it was just selling books so to help people read books, gain access to books. And you see, that has grown in a multi-billion-dollar company. I think it's about 2.3 trillion in value today. And businesses like that, when you're solving a fundamental problem, you don't have to worry about money so much. I mean, this is what I could say that some phrase in the Bible. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and everything else will be added unto you. It's like, yeah, if you know what is kingdom. And I think Jesus Christ and other religious leaders have tried to explain really what it means by that kingdom. And I actually studied it so hard to understand what is kingdom, what's this kingdom means. It is exactly that, to provide service to others. You give it all, you give it all, and then everything else gets added. That's what I believe. Even I see the guys who made Binance. Binance, he wasn't going to make Binance. I know that he wasn't going to make Binance to become rich. He made Binance to help people exchange cryptos. Just that.
Yeah. It's a solution. It's a simple solution stated plainly that creates the most success.
And you see, Binance grew so much in value it bypassed NASDAQ in the United States. Yeah. And I think also, even the creator of Bitcoin himself, Satoshi Nakamoto, who really did not want to become famous or anything, even went to hiding. I don't know. Yeah, we don't know who he is, but he really wasn't creating the Bitcoin protocol to enrich himself. But eventually, he has managed to transform this planet. So I think that ideas that are transformational, they are very, very hard to implement. But when you implement them, then they bring a lot of value back. Elon Musk said that doing something like that is like, it's so hard, it's so difficult. It's like staring at the abyss. I said, what is staring at the abyss? He said, you have to jump before you look, leap before you look. You could say ordinary investor, they say, look before you leap. But in this type of, you could say, mentality of this level of work is jumping before you look. That whole thing is called faith. And our faith is believing in something not seen, the substance of things hoped for. See? It's all work of faith. Yeah.
I think that wraps it up nicely. As always, this is a fantastic conversation. It's a great way to start a Saturday, I think.
Yes.
Gets the mind flowing, and I don't know many people like yourself who are ready to go and travel down 20 different rabbit holes related to finance and morals and economies so early on a Saturday. So thank you, though, for doing that and for letting me be a part of it again.
You're so welcome, Nick, and I appreciate this conversation, this opportunity to speak with the people. We have, lots of people who are looking up to these projects to become successful. I just want to assure them that we are still here. They are going to be very, very successful. And it's because of them that these projects are getting built. So, of course, I also want to thank our friends in ACEX. They're also working very hard. They're beginning to list coins, and I really appreciate their work because they are going to transform that African continent by bringing that dead capital into life again. Yeah. See,
Very
all
exciting.
Right.
Cool. Thank you.
So thank you so much. We shall end here, and I will stop the webinar by doing alt.